Hey guys, it's Mr. Schmidt here, and in this video we're going to finally put MRP, MRC together and model side by side the perfectly competitive labor market alongside a representative firm. And in doing so, we'll talk about this thing called the resource employment rule. So what we've got here is a side-by-side graph, very similar to what we've done with perfectly competitive product markets. And so we're going to apply similar logic here to the labor market and the firm. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do, and I would get in the habit of doing this, is putting, actually I don't think I need that, but putting market and firm at the top of the graphs, just so the AP reader knows which graph is which, and that's just a nice little thing to do that makes things just look a little nicer. So labels, of course, for the market, it's quantity and wage. And when I'm drawing these, I tend to draw them the same way in the same order every single time. And I think doing that helps to keep in your head and create a pattern that your brain can come back to when you need to recall this information to draw it. Okay, and then we've got our demand curve for labor, downward sloping. Supply curve for labor is upward sloping in the market. I'll extend that down just a little bit. And then, of course, we've got our equilibrium quantity of labor down here. And then our equilibrium wage right here. So there is the market. Now for the firm, again, same labels. We've got our quantity of labor and our wage. And then because the firm is a wage taker, or not the, sorry, not the firm, the workers, sorry, gotta be very careful. The workers are wage takers. They take their wage from the market. And so to show that, we're going to extend the wage over to the firm graph. And this looks just like what we would have done with the product market with perfect competition, except there it was the product price, and here it's the wage the workers are going to receive. In the last videos, we talked about the shapes of MRP and MRC. So for MRC, that represents the wage, that represents the workers, and it is a horizontal line because the wage is constant. So if I can make that come all the way over, perfect. And then that is going to be MRC. And one little thing about MRC that I haven't mentioned yet is that MRC effectively is the supply curve in the firm graph. Now, why is that? Because remember, the workers, which are represented by MRC, supply their labor, right? And so that's going to be the supply curve in the firm graph. Now, as for marginal revenue product, again, looks much like this. Remember, diminishing marginal returns, eventually marginal product decreases, and therefore marginal revenue product decreases. So we have MRP, and you might have guessed it, marginal revenue product is going to be the demand curve because it's representing firms and their decision to hire additional workers to get additional revenue. With that in mind, the question we would want to ask is, in the firm graph, how much labor should this firm hire? Where would that be on the graph? And you've probably already intuitively figured this out using what you've learned in product markets. Because in product markets, the rule was marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And it's similar here in the labor market. And that gives us something called the resource employment rule, which says that a firm should continue to employ or hire resources, doesn't have to just be labor, until the marginal revenue product equals the marginal resource cost. Now, on a graph, you will always see that intersection point. In a table, sometimes they won't be exactly equal, and so you would hire the last worker for which marginal revenue product is greater than marginal resource cost. So just something to keep in mind. So if we switch back to the graph here, we can see that the intersection point is going to be right here. And then as we bring that down, that is going to be the amount of labor the firm is going to hire, and we'll call that QF. And so just like that, we have the side-by-side graphs of the market, the labor market, and the firm. Now, just like we did with the product markets, we can also show changes to the labor market and how that impacts the firm. So, for example, let's say there is more workers entering into the labor market. What's going to happen now? Well, we're going to see an increase in labor supply. That's one of the shifters of labor supply, more workers. So we have S1, and then we have our arrow. Don't forget your arrow. So supply shifts to the right. And we notice here we now have a new equilibrium point. So now we have a new equilibrium quantity of labor in the market, EQ1. And then we have a new equilibrium wage, EW1. Now remember, the workers are wage takers. They have to take the wage that the market gives them. And because there is a new wage to be taken, unfortunately for them a lower one, we now have to have a new MRC curve. So we're going to bring over our wage to the firm graph and then draw a new MRC curve, just like that. And so we'll call that MRC1, and that would be equal to supply 1, kind of running out of room here. And then we'll use an arrow to show that curve moved down the graph. And so now we have a new profit maximizing, if you want to say, quantity of labor. And so that's where the two curves intersect. Sorry about that. Where the two curves intersect here, our new marginal resource cost curve and our marginal revenue product curve. And so we have QF1. So not that different from what we've seen with the perfect competition in the product market in terms of how do we manipulate the curves. Now, one question students often ask me is, okay, well, I remember when we did perfect competition with the product markets, we would then have to shift the curve back and move things back up. Is there some kind of long run we have to deal with here? The answer is no. There's no short run, long run we need to worry about here. As long as you can move the curves in the market and then show what's happening with the firm, you should be just fine. So that's all for this video on the resource employment rule and modeling side-by-side perfectly competitive labor markets and representative firms. Until next time, have a great day.